Alright guys, this is going to be my second tutorial on Unity scripting. The first one is just some basics on GUI scripting, and you can check that one out. I think there should be it should be in our channel there. This one is just going to be on some of the basics of coding with Unity. So, in this tutorial, I'm going to cover many of the commonly used default functions in Unity, how to use your own function. I'm going to discuss some of the different control aspects. I'm going to talk about variables and how they're used. I'm going to touch a little bit on GUI, but I have already done a tutorial on that, so if you want an in-depth look at that, you can go take a look at that. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about file organization that won't drive your level designer insane. So, for this one, we're just going to need Unity, and as always, I recommend MonoDevelop for your script editing. So, let me open up Unity here. I have just a default project, and I've imported the character controllers and terrain assets standard packages because I don't really feel like dealing with those. So, just for the sake of getting our little world set up, we're just going to make a quick world and then just give it some of the default features here. So, nothing too spectacular, just a quick world we can work with. Alright, and we'll use a first person controller here. So when we go into our world, it's too low. Or too high. No, yeah, it's too low. Should be good enough. Alright, so here's your basic world. So, what is a world without something to do with it? So that is where the programmer comes in. There's a lot of things, like almost limitless possibilities that you can do if you can use your code. So, and you can see here that the basic character controller's already got a couple scripts on it. Probably not going to mess with those. I'm just going to change a couple default things on this, but once I get that, it's good enough actually. So, I guess the first thing we can do is just kind of talk about some of the basic functions that you can use. So, let's just make a new script here. So, actually, well, let's just start off with organization. So, we have the project view down here. It's got standard assets. That's going to be the default folder for any Unity standard packages you import. They'll put those there by their names. Nothing to worry about. So what you want to do is keep everything as organized as you can, because if you don't, it can get really out of hand. So we don't want that there. What we want to do is just create a quick folder here. We're just going to call this one custom scripts. So any script we make, we put in there. And another good practice is to just, make folders for everything. So if you need a basic assets folder, there's that. And just make sure you keep your folders and everything as organized as possible, so to make it a lot easier for you down the road, especially if you're working with version control. So we got our scripts folder. We want to make a basic script here. So we're going to go with JavaScript, and we're going to call this one, for now I'm just going to call this one HUD. This is just going to be a basic HUD one, just to kind of give our game a little feel to it. So if we double click on that, it's going to open up the default editor, which is MonoDevelop. Here we can see the basic JavaScript file has an update function. The update function it processes like I believe every frame. So when it comes down to it, I mean, this video is probably running about 30 frames per second. That means the update function runs about 30 times a second. So it's one of those functions that you need to use it as sparingly as you can. But remember that certain like physics things and that sort of stuff that needs to be checked is going to have to be run through that. But try to avoid putting really advanced calculations in there and stuff that bogs it down. Rule of thumb for an update function: don't put loops in it. And we'll get on loops later here. But basically, if you put a loop in the update function, it's going to try to do it like 30 times a second in addition to trying to loop, and it just kind of explodes on itself and it'll crash Unity. So you can put them in other functions, but not the update. So the first thing we're going to talk about in this is just the very basic variables. So to declare a variable in Unity using JavaScript, you just type var, short for variable, and you give it a name. Naming conventions can be pretty much all over the place. There are several rules to it, like I don't think it can start out with a number. Yeah, it can't start with a number. And it can't mimic a reserved word. So like a reserved word, they're limited to just words that are used by the system. So I couldn't make one called true. See how that turns orange or red or kind of a maroon. That just lets you know that this is a reserved word. So you only use true if you're dealing with like a Boolean. You also can't use false, obviously. You can't use function. See, that won't work. You can use functions, but not function. So for this one, we're just going to make this a simple string. So I'm just going to call this text. And we'll make it of the type string. String needs to be capitalized. Now, while you're declaring, that's just a basic declaration. So how that's going to show up after we save this is if you look at it in here, let me put it on a basic, just an empty GUI object. You can drag it up there, you can add it to the component menu. It says text and there's nothing there, but you can modify this as much as you want, and that's how it's going to be. You can also, if you want, we'll declare another one here. This one's going to be called num, and it's going to be another file type, and that's going to be an int. An int is really any number that doesn't have a decimal point. So any whole number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 25. Any number. The limit for those is it's in like the trillions. So I wouldn't worry about that. It's any basic number. So what we can also do in here is give it a default value. Now I'm just going to say it equals 0. So we save it and it shows up in the inspector as 0. Now you can go ahead and change that to whatever you want, but the default value is going to be 0. There's several ways that we can change these values too, so I'll get into that later. So we got a string, we got a number. Let's try a complex num. So we're just going to call it cnum, and I'm going to type in float. Now what a float is it's like an integer, but it has a decimal place. So if your int is 1 and you want to turn it to a float, it'll become 1.0. In other programming languages, floats are also called doubles. I don't know if those work in this. Oh, yep, they do. For now, I would just stick to using float unless you need to use a gigantic number. A double uses twice as much memory as an int or a float. I believe an int or a float uses, it's really dependent on the language. I can't accurately answer that one, but I believe it uses anywhere between 2 to 4 bytes of memory, and I believe it is 4 actually, and a double will use 8. So uses twice as much memory, but since we're dealing with machines that have terabytes of memory, not terabytes of memory, sorry, several gigabytes of memory, a couple bytes here and there shouldn't matter. But if you do develop for mobile platforms, you really have to take that kind of stuff into account, because you have a much more limited pool of memory to use. And that memory is the random access memory, or RAM, not like your hard drive. So, moving on. Another very basic type is, let's see, let's go, we'll talk about, actually not really a basic type, we'll talk about a vector 3. So this one's going to be called position, and it's going to be a vector 3. Oh, helps if you spell it right. So we have vector 3, and let's just make another one, and make this one actually a texture. So we'll call this text, and it'll be texture 2D. So we'll use it in the GUI. So none of these have default values, and all of them need to be assigned in the inspector. Or you can also just assign this stuff in the code. So actually I'm going to add just one more in here. It's to be called player, and I'll show you what we're going to do with this. And we'll just make this one a game object. Okay. So all of these are going to show up in your inspector over here on the right side. So CNUM, it's a complex number. We can make it 1.0 and it won't complain. It says 1, but it's programmed in there as 1.0. So position is a vector 3, and it gives you an X, Y, and a Z. We'll use that later here. Texture 2D, you can assign a picture to it. So actually, let's just import a picture here to use in our GUI. So let's go into pictures, and we use Captain Kirk here. So you always want to make sure that when you're importing stuff, that you give it a small size as you think you can get away with. Right now, this one's a 1024 by 1024, and since the picture itself is a lot smaller, we'll go 256 by 256. So that'll shrink that one down. We can change it over to like GUI as a texture, and I think it retains the actual dimensions of it that way. Because if you have texture, it will be a square texture. Because obviously, since like the grass in here is a texture, it has to be that way in order to be tiled out like it is. So we got our texture here, and we want to put that in assets, or if you have a another folder such as like images, you can put it in there. I'm just going to call this one, we'll just call it Kirk. So what we want to do now is we go back to our game object, and we'll just drag Kirk up there, and there he is. So we got that in there. I'm going to leave this player one blank because I want to show you guys how to assign that kind of stuff in code. I'm going to go up here and put a tag on our first person controller. I thought it came with a default, but it looks like it doesn't, but we're just going to tag it player, and that's going to come into play here. So we go into our code, get rid of the update function, and say for instance you want to modify something in your player function. We're going to do that here in a second, but first off in this code we want it to actually display as a GUI. But so we'll just do this. We'll put all the functions we're going to use here. So this one's going to be on GUI, and we're also going to do on star. I don't think it's on star. I think it's just start. So that one will perform when it starts. So this one will always be executed first. I mean, it'll execute before even the update one does. If you can also put on or just awake, and that will activate every time your object is awakened. So start will execute one time, and awake will execute every time it's awake. So if you turn it off and then back on, it still need to execute code, put it in awake. Otherwise, stick to start. So we're going to use these two for now. Might add some other ones later. But on start, what I want it to do is automatically assign this player variable. And since I'm putting in code, I actually want to just go up here and make this one private. so that it's not going to show up in the inspector. So I save this, I look in the inspector, and it's gone because we don't want the level designer to have to deal with this, and we're going to assign it in code anyway. So what we want to do is, this is how you assign a variable in code. You put the name of the variable, which is player, equals, and then for this particular one we want to put game object, and then one of the functions of the default game object is find, and then you can see it pulls up a big list of different other things it can do. So it can just do a generic find, or you can do find game objects with tag, and the one we're going to do is find game object with tag. And I mean, the main difference between these two is game objects with tag is going to find everything with that tag. So I mean, what you would use that one for is if you're trying to find all the enemies in the scene, you want to put find game objects with tag enemies, and then put that in like an array. That's a little more advanced, so we'll talk about that another time. But for now, we want find game object with tag. So we get that. We open this up, and we want the tag player. It's case sensitive, and you put it in there as a string, and we put a semicolon. So if we go and I guess we can't look because it's private, but I'll just make it non-private here for 1 second so I can show you guys. You know, it compiles just fine. It's not in the console. So we can see player is back here, and if we start this up, player is now first-person controller. So it picked it up and assigned it for us. And this is a really useful thing you can do if you don't want to have to assign it every time. Like a lot of people will just go in there and make a bunch of private variables and assign them in the start function to make things really easy down the road. And especially if you're going to have multiple scenes, you don't want to have to go in and assign it every time, because you can get sloppy and miss it every once in a while. So if you just put it in the code once, it'll keep it there, and it makes it a lot cleaner. So we got that. And for our GUI, what we're going to do is I'm just going to make it look like your basic kind of HUD thing. So we'll just do like a GUI layout dot begin area rect, and we'll have this one just be up at the top left, and I'll make this, make it about we'll make it about 500 by, we'll do about 200. So that should be pretty good. And we're going to work this one from in a horizontal fashion. So it's going to be GUI layout dot begin horizontal, and what this to be a box. So we got that set. And then our first thing I want to put in here is just a GUI label, and this is just going to be whatever texture we have. So this is going to be the variable text, which is just Captain Kirk. So we got that in there, and continuing on the horizontal, I want to put some stats here. So what we do is GUI layout dot begin vertical. So this is just going to be a list that's going to be directly next to it. And this one's going to say, this one's just going to say whatever the text one says. And this one below it, we're going to have it just say whatever the number is. So we go ahead and just close all of our layout things. So we get one. You want to end the vertical section there, and we want to end the horizontal one, and then lastly we want to spell things right end the area. So that should be nice. Alright, So it looks like I messed something up here. So, oh, okay, yeah. When you're doing a GUI label, it doesn't like to take, or it will only take a string. So, what you can do is if you want to output a number, you use this. You put dot to string. Okay, and what that is going to do is it's a built-in function of every variable, and that's the ability to translate out to a string. So if you have a number, you just put that there, and it will output it as a string. It won't change the way your number works, but it'll show up that way. So right now, we've got this awesome GUI going on. So you got your character's picture, you got his name, and you got his health. We're just pretend like that's what's going on. So we got our world here, but it's pretty boring. You know, all you can do is walk around, nothing special. So what we can do here is let's add a area you enter where you get points. And for the sake of this, what we're going to do is we're going to put the points calculating script in another actual file. So we're going to go ahead and make another JavaScript, and we're going to call this one player stats. Okay. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to put this one on the first person controller, even though it's not written yet, but it's there. So player stats, losing prefab, who cares? And we'll load this one up, and it pops up right next to my HUD. So the variables we want to put on this one are, we'll just call this one health, and I guess it needs a type. And we'll say it can only be whole health. You can't have like 2.5 health. And we'll do variable name. And we'll make that a string. And we'll do variable score. You know, just to keep track of things. Make that an int as well. And for now, that's all we really need in here. So, actually, you go back and modify the HUD one. And what we're going to do with the function, or the code we wrote earlier, is since we now have the game object, what we can do is make another one that's for our unique type. So we can declare it as, let's call this one stats. And since we wrote that script, it's actually appearing in my list down here, player stats. So we put that there, and that will be our player stats. So you can do that with any custom scripts you write. So what we can do to assign that one is stats equals, and then we can just, since we already have player in there, we can put player dot, and then a really commonly used function here, get component. Get component gets any component that that character has on him. So we want to get component, and then it's player stats. So that shows up on my list. There. So that will automatically assign that. I made it private as well, so that we don't have to have like multiple declarations, because technically in the inspector you'd have to drag the player object in there twice. So this just makes it a lot cleaner. Also, just to show you guys something else we can do with the get component is, notice that vector 3 we didn't use. We can put position equals player dot, and then get component. Actually, not get component. I think you can just put dot transform. Yeah, and what that will do is it will assign. It should work. It should I don't know. Okay, I guess it can't be a vector 3. So we'll just change it up to a transform, even though it pretty much maintains the same stats. So if we look at it, it's just looking for basically like this right here. You see the transform there? It's got all of that stuff on it. You can pick off the ones you want, but for this, we'll just go with that. So we'll use that one later, but it should assign that. So since we have the player status or stats one referenced here, what we can do is go down here, and for where we had the string that was in ours, what we can do is, well, we can actually do two things, but for this one I'll show you the long way of doing it. You can put stats dot, and then you can reference any variable or function, even if it outputs the proper stuff. We'll just do stats dot name. So what that's going to do is look at this and get this variable. And another thing we can do is if we wanted to say assign num, what we can do is num equals stats dot, and then we're going to reference health. Okay, so we got health there, and so that way we don't actually have to change this code right here. And I'm going to actually add another one here to be the score. And this one I'm just going to do the long way as well, because I don't really feel like making another thing. So let's do stats dot, and then actually we'll do it the even longer way, because you don't have to assign those lower ones. You can put player dot, and then I'm sorry, yeah, player dot get component player stats, and then you put dot, and then score dot toString. So I think you guys can see now that doing just assigning your own ones up at the top, like your player and your stats there, makes it a lot simpler. Because I mean, if you look at this line, it just looks terrible. But there we go. Always remember your semicolons. So good old debugging here. Name, persistent name. Okay, yeah, looks like it's getting kind of angry at me. So it's bad about name. I'm not sure why. We didn't make it a private variable, so it shouldn't have a problem with that. Let me take a look at this. Usually when it says an ambiguous reference, it's because it doesn't exist or something. So this is just a good example of debugging here, guys. Yeah, it should work. I don't know if we can just clear that now. Okay. So let's just try assigning it here then, and see if that gives us the same error. So we can put text equals stats dot name. We'll see if that gives us the same error. We'll try just commenting this out and see if it just gives us the same error on that. And it looks like it is. So not 100% sure why that's doing that. Okay, so let's just try something else here then. Okay, so it looks like what it is complaining about is the fact that it's using the word name. So the ambiguous reference means it's not sure if I'm talking about my variable name or if it's talking about the object's name. So we're going to put char name there, so it's sure what it is. Let's take this this one out here and change this at the bottom to char name, and there we go. So yeah, just a good little bit of debugging there. So now, since the character name one has been assigned, it's not really a good example, so let's go in here and change these. So let's say you have 100 health, and score 0, and your character's name is Captain Kirk. So we go into our game, and there's our stats. And this right here is an example of one of your scripts talking to another one. So we got this going. Now I guess it's time to put something in there that will modify them. So let's just get this down to ground level. There we go. That's about ground level. And what we're going to do is make just an object here that's going to like take away your health. So let's see. All you actual Star Trek fans are going to get mad at me, but we're going to use a cube and pretend it's the Borg. Granted, Kirk didn't fight them, but what strikes fear into people more than a cube? So make them a little bit bigger, a little more intimidating, and put them here. So what we're going to do is make another script, and we're going to call this one damage. Just for simplicity's sake, we put in our custom scripts folder, and let's load this one up. So, what we want to do in this one is make a variable that gives it an arbitrary amount of damage to do. So let's do variable, what do we call it? Ouch. And make it an int. So we got that. And what we're going to do is put an onTrigger enter. So function onTrigger enter. Now what this does is it's triggered whenever another trigger or rigid body enters its zone. So it'll execute everything in this little function here when something enters it. And there's also two other versions of this. There's onTrigger exit and onTrigger stay. So they both have their different applications. onTrigger stay will execute like I'm not sure if it's every frame, but it executes a lot. So use it sparingly, and then, or you can use it really to, if you want to have it so you have to stand on that like we'll talk about like Zelda. You have to stand on that square over there in order to open a door. So on trigger stay, we'll just like continuously lower like a little pedestal square down until the door opens. In which case it'll toggle something, and you're fine. So that's a good application of that. On trigger exit would be like if you leave this zone, then it'll kill you. So if you put like battlefield and you go too far from the combat zone, the entire zone's got like an on trigger exit. And if you leave that, you're dead. Or it might just be an entire one surrounding it that's an on-trigger enter. So we actually have a variable that goes with this. It's other, and it's of type collider. So what you can do is with functions, such as this one, you can have it toss different parameters. So what this one does is when a trigger enters it, it gets assigned the name other, and it's the type collider. So what that'll do is allows you to do things to whatever's entered it. So what we can do is we can put if. This is we'll talk about control statements here, because if you don't put something like this, what can happen is different scripts can really mess with it. So if you have this one to say like, okay, anytime something enters this trigger, it explodes. And, what you really want to do is say anytime a missile enters this, it explodes. You have to specify. So what this one we're going to do is if other dot tag, since other is a collider, it has a tag, equals. Now you want to make sure you have 2 there, because that's how we roll in computer science. Because if you have 1, it's an assignment statement. If you have 2, it's a comparison. So other ones you can have is not equal to, which is just a exclamation point is the logic term for not, and then an equal sign. But we're just going to use double equal for this, and then we're going to say player. And I think that should be fine. So anytime something with the tag player enters our collider, it's going to do something. So what we want this to do is trigger a take damage function that I'm going to put on our player status. So what we want to do is, there's a couple ways to do this. We can do like send message, but I'm not going to do that one. because that one, I've only used that a couple times myself. So what we want to do is do other.getComponent and have it talk to our player status. And then what we want that to do is execute the function damage. And we're going to make that lowercase. And we're going to have it just toss the variable ouch. So when something with the tag player walks into here, it's going to get the player status and execute the damage function with the variable ouch. So we go in here and we need to make that function. So function damage, and we want to put hit in here, and it's going to be an int. So what's going to happen is when the player enters this, it will call the function damage with the variable ouch, which will become hit over here, but it fits the parameter, so it'll work. So then what we do is health minus equals, and what that means I'll explain in a second. And then you put hit. So there's a couple ways that you can do an assignment statement, and to avoid repetition, they have some shortened ones. So health minus equals hit is basically the shortened form of health equals health minus hit. And since it's in like a programming language here, we put all of our statements kind of in reverse of what it normally is. Like normally you'd think it would be hit, or like, health minus hit equals, health. But that's not equals. But you know what I mean. That's how you normally do that kind of math. It's the exact opposite when you're programming. So we put that, and that should lower the health whenever we enter it. So what we're going to do is we're going to make another, because we have our object here, and let's see, make sure this is stationary. We're going to put our script on it, and it does 10 damage. So since this has a character controller on it, it should by default have a collider. So this shouldn't require anything be done. So we'll walk over here and watch the health up there. Oh, whoops, didn't make it a trigger. So we just make that a trigger, and now it should be walkable through. So we walk over here, watch the health. Oh, that's embarrassing. So yeah, I don't think we have something on the character controller here. So let me just check this over. Yeah, I don't think it actually does have a collider. So what we'll do is just go up here and add a collider. So we want physics, and yeah, I thought a character controller did that. Okay, well, we'll just add a rigid body to this, and we'll see if that doesn't mess it up. Okay, that didn't work. So let's take this off. It's probably something with the cube. Like I made it a trigger. Maybe I have to make this one a rigid body. Okay, we'll make it is kinematic, which means that it's not going to respond to gravity or anything, and it just floats there. So that should... Not sure why that's not working. Oh yeah, it is working. It's just not updating. Okay. Let me take a look. Nice tutorial of the debugging process here. So for whatever reason, it's not taking. Okay, that's why. Since we did this up here, it's not properly updating it in the GUI. So what we want to do is just take this stats.health and put that down here. There. So now it should update with it. So it was working, but yeah. So if we go in there we go. So every time we enter it, we can stay in there as long as we want, but if we exit it and re-enter it, it does damage. So now that we can get hurt, I think it's only fair that we can get score. So for our score, we're going to just get let's use a sphere. Spheres are nice and unassuming. We'll just put this one down here. So it'll be like Pac-Man. You gotta go over here, but it's guarded. So we got Pac-Man here. Give it a rigid body, kinematic, and we're gonna write another script. So this little script is going to be called, we're going to call this score. Alright, so we'll load this one up, and we'll just give it score variable, and this is an int. And once again, we put an on, trigger, enter, and that is a function, of course. And we want to put other of type, and actually we can even, no, I don't think we can actually, sorry. Collider, capitalized. Okay, and just for the sake, what we'll do is we're going to put if other dot tag equals player. Okay, so this once again just to make sure that we're affecting the right thing, because otherwise it'll do like an error if you're trying to execute like a give score function. So we're just going to do other dot get component player stats, and we're going to execute the score one, and we're going to toss score to it. And since we're using this in the proper scope, it knows that score is a function and it's tossing score to it. So the code understands it, even so we can use the same variables. So let's go back to our player status and do function score amount int. And for this, we're just going to put score plus equals amount. So that should work. I might have to rename some stuff. No, what is that complaining about? Okay, so what we can do is we can click on this and it'll show us what it's complaining about. Oh, yep. See, that's what I'm talking about. It'll complain if it thinks you're trying to assign it. So, okay, yeah, it looks like it doesn't want to take score. So what we'll do is, actually no, it's probably in this one. Let's call this one score func. Okay, so that should work. Yeah. So actually, in addition to this, what we're going to have it do is call that, and we're going to destroy this, because otherwise you can just exploit it and get all those points. And we don't want that. So we want to destroy, and what we want to put is this dot, and then I believe you have to put transform dot. No, what is it? Because if you just do this, it'll just destroy the script itself. So let me get this here. It's this dot. Yeah, what's the game object? So I think it is transform dot. I want to say game object. So hopefully that should get it. Otherwise we'll get a nice little compiler error. So let's go over here. And we got it. Our score didn't go up. And I look bad again. So let's debug this one again. It's a trigger. It's all the same thing. Oh, I didn't put the script on. Oh, genius. Alright, so gives you 10 points. And let's see when the character, it doesn't actually get destroyed. So yeah, it picks it up, I get points, but yeah, I think I put the thing on wrong. So let me just go in and fix that. Okay, so yeah, it looks like what I didn't specify in here is .parent. So I thought it did that automatically, but that should get in. I don't think it has to be capitalized. So now when we go in, that should take care of that. Oh, nope. Maybe it did have to be. So let me check this here. Yeah, maybe it does have to be capitalized. Yeah, it's like kind of irritating. Nope, what is it doing? Okay, let me take a look at this. Okay, we're just going to give this one more try here. I'm going to go ahead and change this from parent to root. Because parent is kind of subjective to the child. So if we do root, it will just go up to the core thing and get it. So this should take care of it here. So we go over and there. I got it. So as you can see, we have a game here. But I mean, it's not really a game unless there's some kind of consequence. So what we can do here is in our player status function, we can put a win-loss condition. So to do this, we'll just put a function called game over. We'll put it all lowercase. And what we're going to have it toss is just we'll just go with result. And we're just going to make this a Boolean. So we have that. And what we're going to do is with damage here, we're going to have this inside of a function. So if health is we'll just go less than or equal to hit. Actually, for this, since we're maintaining there, if it's greater than or greater than hit, it's going to execute this code. Now we can also put else, and what that'll do is if the above condition here in the if is not met, it will just do this one. So we go to that else, and we're going to put game over, and we're going to put false in there. So what that'll do is it'll go, okay, if his health is greater than the hit, so let's do, yeah, greater than or, no, yeah, it's got to be greater than. So what'll happen is it'll execute this. So we're just going to have game over false. So what we can do is if not result, which will mean if it's the opposite of true. So if result is false, it's going to do this. So we're going to have debug.log and put you lose. So now if we go back into the game, I guess it helps to spell. And we go over here. We just keep messing with this cube, but we're just not doing very good here. happen is when it can't take it away, you lose. So it didn't take out the final health, but it did execute that. So yeah, we can do that. Just for continuity purpose, we'll just do that so it does equal 0. And we should probably give this a win condition, because Wolf Hunt's a game that you can never win. So we'll do similar code here. We'll do if score, or I'm sorry, yeah, if, actually what we need to do is set amount to win. So we'll call this one goal. And we'll set that arbitrarily in the game. So we'll put if, actually let's put this one afterwards. You'll add to it. So we'll put if score is greater than goal, greater than or equal to goal, and then we'll have our code that's executed right here. So every time the function is executed, it'll do this, and then it'll check to see if we can do this. So what we'll have is game over true. And you can really make that whatever you want, but for ours we're using a Boolean. So if not result, that. Then we'll put else if result. For these two situations, like an if and an else work. You can also use an else if in that formatting. If like you're comparing several numbers, it works pretty well for that. So we'll put debug.log you win. So we do that. So we'll go in here, and actually I guess it's kind of impossible to win since we can only get 10 points. So we're just going to duplicate this. Control D duplicates. So Control D. And actually we'll just jump the score on these up to 25. So we get 25, and we're going to, in this, set our goal as 100. So now if we go in and go over these 4, it will display you win. And we can even, in our HUD, if we want to add something in there, we can go, and you can use if-else statements in here. So you can put if, let's go with, actually hang on one second. Alright, sorry about that there. Just had to pause that. So what we can put is, if, and then we want to reference this here. And actually what we're going to do is we're going to have this return a different variable that will modify the, the GUI, and we'll have a reference in the other one. So what we'll do is, let's say, we'll call it variable, and it will be win, and it'll be a Boolean, and we'll do variable lose, which will be a Boolean as well. So obviously both of these could be true, but for this, only one should be. So this one will put lose equals true. And this one will put win equals true. And make sure we set these to false up here. So then we go into this and we put if stats dot win. It'll execute something up there, and we'll just put if stats dot lose. It'll execute something up there. So for this one, we'll just put another label here. let's have it say just you win, and then down here, copy and paste this for time. Put you lose. Put it in all caps though, so everyone knows that you're yelling. Put some more exclamation points. So if we go in now and we win, it'll pop up there. And then we can also make lose pop up too, because we're not going to make a seamless game here. And you lose. But as you can see, that'll show up there in the GUI so they can know. You can also even set it up so like you can have something pop up. So if we want to make something pop up, we can just we'll do it in the player status one. We'll just put function on GUI and just basically do the same thing we did in here, except what you want to do is actually, give it a location to put that kind of stuff. So we'll actually use just a regular GUI one for this. So GUI.label, and then for this we need to put rect, and then what we'll do is we'll just put it right in the middle of the screen. So width, and then minus, we'll make this like 200. So 200 by 200. So we got that, and then just make sure to put these in parentheses, and to center we just divide it by 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy that one down here, and we put our message again. And we go back in here and, ooh, didn't close a parenthesis somewhere. Oh, obviously, it doesn't know what stats means. And this isn't a dot. So it's funny how tiny little things like that can just give you a wall of compiler errors. So now, if we go over here and win, now a little label pop up. So that's just a label. It's probably best if we have a box in there, but if you watch the GUI tutorial, then that should explain how to do that. So I think that pretty much covers everything. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to email the OUGDA our Gmail account. It should just be ohiougda@gmail.com, and I'll address any questions you guys have or any tutorial requests. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it, and good luck out there.